Hi, my friends. My name is Rinaldo Aguiar, and today is June 24th, 2025, and it's about 11 a.m. here in Katy, Texas. 77.4. So I would like to welcome you, curious minds, to another episode of Law Enforcement Rapid Fire Tips. And this video is part of this campaign I'm advancing. Bring Diosdado to justice, bring Diosdado to the US. So the idea, to reiterate, is to share tips with law enforcement, focusing on those that could carry significant liability for Diosdado Cabello given his illegal operations here in the US. So today, I'm going to split it into two sessions, so it's more manageable, because yesterday's session was too long and it took me a lot of time to edit it. So I'm going to split it into smaller segments. So on the first segment, I would like to go over a few things that I missed yesterday that I was going to mention, but given that the session extended out to almost 2 hours, I ended it before I could get to these points. But these are important small items that could lead to somewhere. So for this, instead of saying this over and over again, I'm going to say it at the beginning. All these things are documented in the website, in the page that is located at spyheld.org/evidence. Okay. And that page is translated into 14 languages. So you can get the details about the things that I'm going to say today in this session in that page. And I'm going to mention them here in this video in a very shallow form, like I'm just going to mention the incident and give an idea of what it is. So if you're interested in the details, please go to the website, okay? So item number one, it's about a person by the name Pavel Shatilov. The spelling is P as in Papa, A, V as in Victor, E, L as in Lima. That's the first name. And Shatilov is spelled S as in Sam, H as in Honduras, A as in Apple, T as in Tango, I as in India, L as in Lima, O as in Oscar, V as in Victor. Pavel Shatilov. So this is a Russian citizen, and today, at least last year, he was a director in a field related to IT security and encryption in a Russian university in Moscow. So in the Technical Institute, okay? He's relevant because by the end of 2014, I think, in December of 2014, he rented my apartment. Like, he personally rented my apartment on Airbnb, in my apartment in Tribeca in New York. And he destroyed the apartment, and I believe he stole my computer. He stole code from my computer, that my computer was in that apartment when he rented it, okay? And this coincidentally happened right at the same moment that I started seeing my former partner, right, Marcelo's mom. So that was a strange coincidence, but this happened right there, right? Now, what's interesting is that, Pavel Shatilov directs a technical office today in Russia that has deep implications in national security in Russia, mobile security, and encryption. And interestingly, his office, not the university itself, but there's a point in Elon Musk Geo Index that it's marked with paramilitary scores that falls like 10 meters from the window of his office in that technical institute in Moscow. Go figure. So that's one data point. And I'm mentioning this because it could tie Diosdado Cabello to Russia, right? Directly via Harold Martinez. Second observation. So this is an incident that happened last year, 2024. The date was May 18, 2024. And this was an incident in which I was looking for houses, right, at that time to buy. I wanted to buy a house, to live this house, because I understood that they had me surrounded here. And I didn't have the geo index yet, so I didn't really understand the gravity of the situation for everybody, not only for me. So I thought that by moving to another street, I would be safe. So I was looking to buy a house, and we went to see. So my former partner suggested a house that is located in something called Weston Lakes. Okay, Weston Lakes is an interesting compound. I would call it a paramilitary compound, really. And I have to note that it has the Weston name marker in the name, which is the same name as Weston, Florida, which is also another paramilitary compound. Very prominent. Weston Lake in Florida is pretty much the equivalent to Lake Point Estates in Katy. Okay, it's the same thing. It's a gated community, a manned security guard at the entrance. a small number of houses, all of them multi-million-dollar houses, right? Some of the houses have paramilitary scores. Most of the houses have paramilitary scores. Some of them have the two lots, the empty lots marker next to them. It has an artificial lake. It's the same setup. It's exactly the same setup. So I would recommend authorities checking out Weston, Florida. But going back to Weston Lakes here in Katy, or near Katy, we went to see that house, right, on May 18, 2024. And it was an interesting visit for many things, right? So first of all, when I had been in that community before, when Virgil E. Chavez, and what's her name? The name of the woman escapes me, but let me, for completeness, right? Let me do this real quickly. Yeah, so this is the entry in the website about Chatilov, and I even have a photo of him in the website, and his phone number at the time, I also have it. It's a 718 phone number. It's in my contact list in Google Contacts, and I have it documented in the website as well. But anyhow, Virgil's wife, yeah, Chavez, Virgil, and Rebecca. So they live in Weston Lakes. Weston Lakes, I found it very interesting because it's not in Katy, right? It's close to Katy, but it also has a man security. It has two man security gates. It's a huge community. It's paramilitary compound, but it's huge. And what's interesting about it, to me at least, is that it applies this concept that you would see like in like presidential security details, for example. This concept of security rings, right? So the compound in itself has a perimeter, right? That it's gated. It's a perimeter, and it has a gate. And then inside of the compound, there's another compound on itself with another circle, another gate, right? It's a circular that has another security system, isolated from the first one. You may live in Weston Lakes, but it is possible that you live in the outer ring, and then you only have access to that area. But if you want to have access to the inner ring, then you have to have the remote control or the access codes. I don't know how it works exactly, of this inner perimeter. That tells me that it's basically they're using the agents on the outside as a buffer for the ones in the inner ring, which are the important ones. So this makes it super easy to detect them, the important ones, which is what I guess, to reduce the scope of the investigation, right? So what matters is what probably law enforcement would go after first, right? So anyhow, Chavez, Virgil, and Rebecca, they live in this inner ring. And I went to a party there that my former partner took me to. And they have the oversized backyard with the trapezoid shape. They have all the checklists, the items in the checklist. Anyhow, we went to see a house there on the outer ring, of course, right? They wouldn't let me move into the inner ring. And the whole visit was obvious to me that it was controlled by this criminal network. For example, the realtor that was showing that house is marked in the index. When we arrived there, she wasn't driving her car, but she was being driven by a man who was driving one of these spy vehicles. If I describe the vehicle, it would be very similar to the vehicle of that man that Morgan Heibler sent to trespass the property lines and provoke me when they delivered me with the divorce papers that Gustavo sent me on April 16th, a car exactly like that. And the guy was like in the car with the seat all the way back so you could not see his face. Like the whole thing was just comical. Anyhow, as we're looking at the house, and I'm going to mention this because this is not documented on the website, but I'm going to mention it here. As we're looking at the house, a small plane, flew right on top of the house at very low altitude. I would put it at 200 feet, maybe less, maybe 100 feet altitude. Very low, right? At that point, we were outside looking at the backyard, right? On a terrace on the second floor. And my partner is to my to my right. And when I hear the plane, I don't look up, right? Because I don't want to make it obvious that I'm aware of the plane. The realtor is on my left. So my ex-partner is on my right. So without looking at the plane, after the plane passes, I casually ask my former partner, what is the time? Right? And she tells me it's 1:45, if I recall correctly. Don't quote me on the time. I might be wrong, but it was something 45. 11:45 or 1:45, I can't recall. I said, okay, thank you. And we saw the house. I realized that this was a ruse, and of course, I'm not going to buy this house. And we left, okay? We were in the black Tesla at the time. And they were following me. I could tell, right? I didn't have all the technology I have today, but I could tell because of I've been going through this for years. I could tell that they were being followed, that I was being followed. As we're leaving, right, this paramilitary compound of West Lakes, when we are like 5 minutes into our trip back, my former partner asked me this question inside of the Tesla, of the black Tesla. Right? I'm driving, she's on the passenger seat. She asks me, let me ask you something. The reason why you asked me for the time was to track that plane and find the tail number later? When she asked me that question, I was surprised. And honestly, I felt proud. I was, you're learning something. Like, you're a little spy now. I didn't suspect anything. I just said that. I even congratulated her and gave her like a pat on the shoulder. Anyhow, the Target incident happened later, right? So after that point, we went to Target. And what I want to mention about Target, and that's, I have the receipt here. I'm going to read the receipt, the data. Well, so I paid for this. Oh, here I can see the time. So this was at 11 a.m. that I paid at Target. So the visit of the house has to be earlier than that. 10:40, maybe 9:45 or 10:15 could be the time of the plane, something like that. When the plane flew over the house. So this was at the Target at Katy Cinco Ranch, and the phone number is 281-392-8331. And this was at 23710 West Heimer Parkway, Katy, Texas, 77494. This was on May 18, 2024 at 11:09 a.m. is when I paid. And I bought Bluey toys for Marcelo and some other small items. Okay. Yes. Okay. The reason I'm mentioning Target is because the level of surveillance and physical surveillance targeting me personally within that store was immense, was something almost comparable to what I saw during the visit to the Dockerhood on the 22nd of June. Like, not at that level of desperation. They weren't desperate. Like, they didn't seem desperate. They seemed confident in this occasion. Like, they were confident, right? Like, they were like, we are in charge of this situation, and I was the prey in that situation, right? And they were the hunters. They were hunting me inside of the store. And if I put a number to it, I would say in total, in between the parking lot and inside the store, they might have had at least 40 agents, 40, 50 agents following me aggressively. Like, I could not look at a toy without having a person standing next to me. And all this was because I had just gone to the Campesino Coffee House, I think, a couple of months before. I guess the paranoia they had was that they were thinking that I would make another attempt to contact the FBI and I could succeed in contacting a real FBI agent. So they were my shadow at that point. They couldn't let me be alone within 3 meters of distance without a SEBIN agent or an FSB agent next to me. And this was over a year ago. So anyhow, I'm mentioning this because if law enforcement has access to the footage, you will see the way they were following me that day. And I bet that a person trained in this field can see the footage and can recognize, what they're doing and hopefully track the actual people responsible, right? Now, interestingly, I didn't have all the technology I have now. So I often noted things on pieces of paper that I had in my car, and I have some plates in the back of this receipt. They must be important. Like, I don't recall exactly what happened with these people, but I imagine some kind of harassing incident and I took the plates, right? So I'm gonna read them out loud here. So one is, they are Texas plates. One is T as in Tango, K as in Kilo, Z as in Zulu, 9537, it seems. I'm not entirely sure, like my handwriting wasn't very good that day. And besides that, I noted another 3 letters, T as in Tango, M as in Mike, N as in Nicole. But I can't recall exactly why I noted this, but I'm saying this. And the other one is B as in Bob, C as in Zulu, 2. Then there's a dash, R as in Robert, 906. And the format seems weird. It's a Texas plate, but instead of having 4 digits, I wrote an R right before the 9. It should have been a number. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those vanity plates that they make look like real plates, like organic plates. I don't know. But this one, if I recall correctly, I think this was a truck, and don't quote me on this, but it could be, right? I think this was a truck that was parked on the house diagonal on the back to my house where they were intercepting the Comcast aggregator. I think it was a truck, and I think I tracked it to a person that was dead. I think the owner of this truck was dead, but the truck was parked there. If I recall correctly, it was a Ford pickup truck, older model. But don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. Okay, so that's the target incident. Okay, but just to drive the point home, what struck me really, I didn't mention this. So my former partner says in the car, she asked me, the reason you asked me for the time is because you want to track the plane and the tail number later. And I say, yes, congratulate her, pat her on the shoulder. Now, interestingly, after we got home, and I do go online to track, because I was doing these things manually before. I didn't have systematic means at this point. I had some systematic means, but it was very early on. So I think I went online to one of the systems to check planes, and I saw that this plane I have the tail number, and this is documented in the website, everything, like the tail number and everything. And this is how I tracked at the end that pilot that lives in Kitty Hawks, at 22 Kitty Hawk in Richmond, in front of the Walmart. There is a small paramilitary compound also. They have all the houses in that compound. And basically, those are houses that have their own hangar. Each house has a hangar and a plane, and they have a small landing strip that is shared among these, 20, 25 houses, okay? So it's a small community of people that own small planes and small jets, basically. And there's a pilot there, Mr. Marks, if I recall correctly, at 22 Kitty Hawks. And there are a lot of incidents documented with him in the website. And his house was used to transmit drop-off scatter from the corner on Cedardale to his house. And all this is documented. But anyhow, when I get home and I check the plane, I find the plane, right, that flew on top of his house at the exact moment. And I've noticed that the plane turned off the transponder at the exact moment, like 3 minutes after my former partner asked me if I was going to track the plane, right? So this tells me that they were listening to the conversation in the car, because otherwise, why would they turn off the transponder exactly at that time? And of course, the question that today lingers in my mind is whether her question was intentional. If she was intentional, remember when I said the other day that I've noticed that romantic interests, sometimes they do this thing, it's a technique where they are having a conversation with you, but the real recipient, the real intended recipient of the communication, verbal communication, is not you, it's the man listening to whatever bug they have on you or on her. So it occurred to me that maybe that was one of those instances in which she was asking me something or telling me something, but really she was sending a message that I was going to track the plane, so they would turn off the transponder. And if that's the case, that would mean that she would be in it. I don't know. But that would tie the pilot to Diosdado Cabello. That's why I'm mentioning it. Not because of her. I'm mentioning it because of Diosdado Cabello. So that's the target incident, okay? Moving on. Yes, yesterday I made a mention that they're tracking me visually. And I think I should, just for completeness, because I don't know if viewers would recall when I explained or when I mentioned about the technique of tracking the MAC addresses of the vehicles that pass by and then tracking people that way. So the obvious question is, why do they have to track you visually if they can track the MAC address? Why would for example, the Lincoln compact SUV yesterday, parked hidden around the corner and having the woman acting as a spotter looking through the back window to see if I turn left or right, remember? Why would they have to do that if they can track the MAC address, would be the obvious question. The answer to that is, and I think I'm saying this because, not to say that I'm smarter than them or anything, but I think it shows it could be a confirmatory signal of that I'm on the right track on the assumptions and hypotheses that I'm putting forward. So remember the armored vehicle is the one that is on the Cold Mobile Raw channel picture. I bought that vehicle last year, late Q4 last year, because I saw after I computed the geo index and I saw that they were making active attempts to kill me with tampering with my medicine, dehydrating me, trying to run me over with the health care management truck, all those incidents, right? So I saw my life in danger. And I had the illusion that if I bought an armored vehicle, I could still function as a human being and go outside, even if I had to use an armored vehicle. But I had the illusion that I could have some level of freedom and independence, right? So I bought that armored vehicle, and it cost me a lot of money. And I remember they had me in this economic war in which they don't let me have any income, right? I cannot work for a company because they wouldn't buy the company, right? And then spy on me or harm me in some way, legally or with an intellectual property lawsuit, or I can't work until I resolve this situation. So I've been without income for 3 years at this point, resisting, right? Anyhow, I made the investment. I took money out of my savings and bought the armor vehicle. When I did that, I asked I made a request to the dealer. So the dealership of where I bought this is a dealership that specializes on armored vehicles and I did my research, and it seems like they sell vehicles to like embassies of foreign countries. So they have experience in this stuff. So I bought a second-hand vehicle from them, right? It's a Suburban, 2012, I think, or 2011, I can't recall. And when I bought it, I made a special request to them. I asked them if it would be possible to disable all the transmitting electronics on the vehicle, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, everything, right? And they said, yes, sometimes we get this request. That they told me that verbally, right? And this was striking to me because, how do I say this? So if some of their customers were asking, so when I asked the question, right, because I thought they will think I'm crazy. I'm obviously not a president or a ambassador, or like, I'm obviously, because I wouldn't be buying a secondhand 13 years old, making this a strange request. So I elaborated a little bit. I said, I have some business adversaries that are tracking me using the MAC address of the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth connections of the vehicles that I have today. So I want to avoid that. And I want to remove that possibility from the table. So I want to disable all the electronics that have this capability. And the response that I got from the salesperson was, yes, we get this request from time to time. So I'm mentioning this because you remember the immune entities pattern? Not the geo entities in general, the entities pattern, where they defend themselves from their own weapons. It occurred to me that if this company get this type of request, it has to be people like them, or people of their network that know that they can be tracked using the MAC addresses, and therefore they want to disable them. So anyhow, the man went ahead and they did that. It took a few more days, or I think a week more, right? Like it wasn't an easy thing. Like it took a few days for them to do it. But they did it, and they sent me the vehicle, and it doesn't transmit anything, right? So that's the reason why they have to track me visually now, because this called mobile is like a ghost vehicle, right? Like it doesn't have a MAC address. So what they do with the cars parked Moscow style doesn't work. That's also how I know that when they're parking the cars Moscow style right now, these days, and Side Drive, they're not tracking me. They're tracking my former partner. For whatever reason, they have to track her. I'm not accusing her of anything, but they have a reason to track her because their tracking is her. Is that she's driving the Tesla and that car has a MAC address and they can track that. But my car doesn't have a MAC address. So those cars they do nothing to me. And they still park them there. Now, talking about that, I want to mention the last few times that I've gone to Lake Point State, I've noticed there's no more cars parked Moscow style at Lake Point State. None. Like the streets are all clean now, no cars. And now this Side Drive is full of cars parked Moscow style all the time, right? I know it's not a smoking gun, but I think it shows a pattern, right? That wherever I'm sleeping or wherever I'm staying, they park the cars Moscow style there, right? I'm just trying to establish the pattern of criminal activity with that observation. So that's the reason why they have to track me visually now, because this car doesn't have a MAC address, doesn't transmit a MAC address, okay? And I think that shows as well that even, I don't know, 8 months ago, I knew the mechanisms they were using, that this is not new to me, right? It's not something that I discovered last week. And that I took steps proactively to prevent it from happening as much as I could, to make it more difficult for them to kill me, which I think shows that I'm adapting. Okay, the next observation I have is something that happened yesterday. Okay, it happened 2 times yesterday. It's about radars, okay? So I'm going to describe what I saw, and then I'm going to say what I think, okay? So what I saw is this. Yesterday, I was doing something. I took my phone from one place in the house. It was in airplane mode, okay? But I took it from one room to another. And as I'm walking, I look through the window and I see that the South Typhoon agents from 26711 Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas, 774, the house diagonal to me in the front, they're coming out in the white Tesla, okay, the one that I suspect that has the heavier communications and interception equipment. They're coming out, but as they're coming out, they stop the vehicle completely. right on the edge of the driveway, and they don't move, okay? And because I've had the experience with the agents in Lake Point Estates, where I had the opportunity to really study the technique, I know what this is, right? I'm saying she because the prominent agent is the woman, right? That's the one that never shows the face. The man sometimes shows his face. So that tells me that he's not that prominent. He's more like a helper to the woman. I've seen this technique before, right? So what she was doing, or he was doing, they stopped the vehicle until the mode, because my phone was in airplane mode. So if they start moving the vehicle, they cannot capture anything because the phone is not transmitting or receiving. But so what they were doing was waiting until I put the mode, until I turned off the airplane mode of the phone, and the phone would start transmitting. And at that point, their plan was to start moving the vehicle perpendicular to the house at constant speed to capture the MAC address. Of course, I didn't put it on airplane mode immediately. I waited, and they didn't move the car. Eventually, I said, and I was going to record this to show that I can anticipate their movements, but I didn't do it. So I said, I'm going to turn it on, especially if I had a remote control. I can control when they move the cars, right, by turning on or off the airplane mode. So I turned it on, and effectively, no, so I didn't turn it on, sorry. This time, what I did was that I walked away, and they didn't move the car. And then I walked again towards the window, and I stayed there for 5 seconds. And then maybe more, maybe 10 seconds. Like they were waiting, and I was waiting. Like it was like a waiting game. But then they moved the car. So I guess this led me to think there's 2 options here, right? One is that they got tired of waiting, and it would be too obvious, and they decided to move the car. Or 2, that somehow they knew I was in the window, and they thought that I could be recording with my phone, as I have done countless times to other agents, and they decided to move the car. Which brought me to the question, how do they know that I was in the window, that I was exactly at the window? That happened, right? Also, yesterday, after I published that video that has a lot of technical details about how the satellite decoding, imagery decoding system works, the roof colors and the markers and all that, after I published that, I saw a change in conditions immediately, almost immediately. So the first thing I noticed is that they parked a red car on the previous agent's house as my ex-partner was coming in to see me. She came yesterday to talk to me, and they had a red car parked. Now, I've known for a long time, I haven't said this, but I've known for a long time that the presence of a red car next to it, or in a safe house, or in front of a safe house, basically in between a known agent or safe house and the target. If they park a red car in the middle, it's a signal that basically means stop. Don't do anything. Don't intercept any traffic. It's a way to tell all the people involved visually very quickly that they should not do anything criminal, because they don't say why, but don't do it. So when they parked the red car, as she was coming to see me, I understood that it could be a signal, right? Like kind of signaling the others that there should be no communication between her phone or her car and any of the other players. So that's one of the things that happened. And the other thing that happened that is most interesting and relevant to the first observation is that as she was leaving in the afternoon around 4:45 or 4:40, as we're going to open the door, right? So we're both walking towards the main entrance of the house. I opened the door for her. And when I opened the door, I see Sarah Pretty, the female agent, the wife of Michael Pretty, the one that's employed by Citgo, CITGO, driving her red Tesla right in front of my door. And in the exact moment that my ex-partner, my former partner, was going to come out of the door, and she saw the red car, okay? And this is also a signal that I've seen before. The signal is when they present the OG, it means also don't do anything, okay? There's danger. By OG, the supposed real owner of the house. For example, when I was living at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, I moved in, I think, 26th of June of last year, 2024. The next day, literally the next day, they moved these other agents. Bonner is the last name. They always put these funny names on the agents. The agent Bonner, who is, I would describe him as a Eastern European, maybe Russian, 5'10", 5'11", 160, 170 pounds, maybe 50 years old, balding a little bit. They moved them to that house the next day after I moved to mine. It was that quick. And then they did the thing where they changed the roof because they put the antennas in the roof and the surveillance gear and the cameras, the hidden cameras. So immediately when they are going to commission a new house, they change the roof. And when they're gonna decommission it, they also change the roof to remove the equipment. And I've seen this like dozens of times, and I have them all documented. So these are confirmatory signals, right? So anyhow, after that day that I saw that man, when they moved them the first day, that they started like beaming signals at my house the minute they arrived with the SUV. And this, again, this is documented, and I have the spectrometer readings and everything, right? The photos, everything. After that day, I did not see that man again for months, right? After that, it was just a parade of agents, Chinese, Venezuelans, Russians. Like that house was like a multicultural hub. If you didn't have any context, like you saw the faces and the clothing of the people coming in and out of the house, you wouldn't know what was in that house. You would think it was some kind of embassy or the United Nations, something like that, because you would see Indians and Pakistanis, and you can tell because of the clothing, turbans, things like that. The color of the skin, right? The shape of the eyes, like there's many tells, like that tells you more or less where they're from. So anyhow, after that day, I did not see him again for months until something significant happened where there's a risk, and then they bring the man, right? And then the man does the thing like where he checks the mailbox, he looks at the garden, like he makes sure that he's seen by the other, because his presence is the signal that something significant is happened, and then everybody should stand down. So that's what I saw yesterday with Sarah Pretty passing with her car exactly at the same moment as we were approaching the entrance for my former partner to come out. And again, the question here was, in my mind, how did they know that she was about to come out? To orchestrate that Sarah Pretty passing on the red car exactly at the exact moment. The door is very narrow. This was a precision that was mesmerizing to me. And so in the same day, two instances in which two things occur. First, the incident when the South Typhoon agent and the white Tesla waiting in the driveway and leaving when they realized that I'm at the window. Now, they could not have seen me through the window because the window have this tinted film that makes it impossible to see to the inside during the day. It's like in a mirror if you look at it from outside. And then Sarah Pretty anticipating, to be fair, I don't think it was Sarah Pretty. I think it was one of those body doubles that they use, because I've had so many incidents with Sarah Pretty that I know what she looks like, and this wasn't her. I don't think it was her, to be honest. But anyhow, the commonality in the two incidents is that they seem to be able to anticipate the position and the direction of travel of people inside of the house. How do they do that? It has to be a radar. And I think it's an M wave, a millimeter wave radar. And at some point, I bought one of those, which is funny because I bought it from a company in China. So imagine that. But anyhow, I think they have one of those radars and in the house, right? And they can see their position. And it could be those devices that man installed in the air conditioner. That's my theory, my working theory right now. So I disconnected them this morning to see if they're still able to pull this trick off, right? If they are unable to pull it off again in the next few days, then it means that it's probably that device, which means that that company installed malicious equipment inside my home with the purpose of tracking my movement inside my own home forever. That has to be seriously criminalizing. And of course, that has to be Diosdado Cabello. Right? Okay, next observation is about something I mentioned days ago about how they install or put listening devices, passive devices on your romantic interests. And I mentioned the earrings. I was reviewing my notes, and I have a note that said that I suspect that it's the left earring specifically. And that now this might be custom to me, right, tailored, because I'm right-handed, right? So if I'm going to talk to somebody, whisper something to somebody on the ear, I would naturally lean to my right, which means that the person will lean to their left. No, sorry, they will lean to their right as well, but exposing their left ear. So that's why I think they put it on this. It's always the left ear. And I remember I did some experiments with this with Penelope last year, in which I tried to talk to the other ear, and she would force me to talk to the left ear. So I think the bug was on the left earring specific, okay? Not the right one. Mentioning this in case, and this makes sense. Like if you want to plant something like that and you have two, you may want to plant it in one to cut the probability of detection in half. So that's one I'm mentioning that. The other item is the red vehicles as a signal. I mentioned that, and the OGs as a signal. Okay, so those were the items that I have pending that I'll do one more to leave this session in suspense for the next one. So this one is about shopping, online shopping, okay? And it's more of a technical observation. And spoilers alert, the next session is going to be very technical towards online technologies, okay? Internet technologies. It's going to be in that area. This comes from the observation, the motivation for saying this comes from the observation of Harold Martinez potentially being a pivot juncture point, given his Iranian Venezuelan dual citizenship, as Alex Saab, Piero Midyar, and characters of that nature. When I was talking about that, I thought or hypothesized that there might be a person that might be an Iranian Cuban citizen or an Iranian citizen and another country's citizen, but with Cuban parents, like Bezos. That might serve as a juncture point between Iran and Cuba because of, and I said this, I quote, because of the Amazon eBay thing, is what I said. And I didn't go into details what I meant by that. And that's a very deep subject. And I thought that I should probably mention or give an idea, right? So give a hint what I meant by that in case investigators ever look at this, right? What I meant, and I can assess whether it's something worth pursuing or not. So what I meant by the Amazon eBay thing is the following. Years ago, when I was doing Calculado Health and I was building technology to defend the website against Liana Technologies and their attacks and everything, I was doing basically the same thing that I'm doing today in the offline world, but on the internet world, right? Like debugging how they manipulate things and how they operate. And at the time, I did a lot of debugging on a set of queries that were related to shopping queries, okay? Let me show this graph right now. Sorry. Let me do this real quickly to give an idea what I'm mentioning here. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. So for what I'm gonna say, please ignore the left side of this chart. So you see this micro or U here, this little U. What I'm gonna say, let's talk about only the right side of this curve. Okay. So let's ignore the left side. Imagine that the zero of so it's like this is actually this. So I'm gonna talk only the 0 to the positive numbers, right? The positive sigmas. So this is what I'm gonna say. So when I was developing the shopping queries, and I bring up this chart to show a typical normal distribution, okay, in queries. So in the search business, we talk about the head of the distribution and the tail of the distribution. Imagine that this chart represents queries on the x-axis, okay? That you would have a lot of queries, like search phrases that people search for, cars, flowers, eHarmony, chocolate, whatever. And then on the y-axis, you have frequency, like how many people daily or monthly, whatever time frame you choose, search for that phrase, okay? So what we're referring the business as the head of the distribution is basically the part between, it's like the top tier queries, like the top 5% queries, like this area of the curve over here on the top, right? So these are a small number of queries. If you look at the number of queries that fall into that segment, it's a small number of queries. And they're usually short queries, okay? Because people tend to type, people are lazy, they tend to type shorter queries more often. Like more people type car than Toyota, right? Or more people type Toyota than Toyota Camry, or more people type Camry than Toyota Camry, right? That's the head of the distribution, what we call the head. The head queries are the queries that happen very frequently. So this is like the most desirable queries, right? Like the queries that are worth a lot of money. If you place Google Ads, for example, and the frequency correlates with the price of the Google Ads. So if you want to place Google ads in Google AdWords, using Google AdWords or whatever advertisement platform really by keywords, the keywords that are on the head of the distribution are the most expensive keywords, right? For example, I don't know the numbers right now because as I said, these people don't let me have any income, so I cannot spend any money in advertisement. And even if I did, they would use bots to click on the ads to drive me to exhaust my budget. And they've done this before, right? So I know. Yeah. So for example, back in the days, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I remember one click in Google for a query like cars could be worth $70, 70, something like that. Like they're very expensive. And then as you walk through the distribution, you arrive to the frequency decreases, and these on the right side is what we call the tail of the distribution. So these are a lot of queries. This is a long tail. Like this graph doesn't make justice to what I want to illustrate. It's a very long tail, millions, maybe even billions of different queries in all languages, where the queries happen very rarely. Some queries could happen 10 times per month. Some queries could happen 1 time per month. That's the tail. So observation I want to say is the following. When it comes to shopping queries, the shopping queries, that segment, is dominated by these two companies, eBay and Amazon, okay? And the way it's split is that Amazon dominates the head queries and eBay dominates the tail queries. And I think if you ask me as an expert in search, I think this shows coordination between these two companies. Because it's like the overlap is almost perfect. The non-overlap is almost perfect, right? So if you look for any product in Google, if you look for a search query, what will rank at the top is consistently Amazon, right? If you look at these two companies only, right? If it's possible that for some queries, the manufacturer will rank higher. But if you concentrate only in online stores, right? Remove the manufacturer from your analysis, remove the Wikipedia page, right? So only the pages that are commercializing these shoppable items. So if you only look at that universe of results, the top result for the head queries is Amazon, and the top results for the tail queries is eBay, right? Or Craigslist or companies controlled by eBay, Kijiji in Canada, right? So, and how you tell, right? Looking at a product, if it's a tail or not. If you look for things that have like the model number, right? If you're looking for a specific thing and you want to search for it using the model number, a specific model number, what will come at the top is always eBay, right? More than Amazon. And then, but if you're looking for a generic category of things, more on the head of the distribution, what will come on the top is Amazon. So what I'm saying, I think it's a very grave thing, right? Is that these two companies might have orchestrated using Liana Technologies, of course, because that's the service provider for the criminal things they do online. Tursas, that's the guy, the CEO of Liana Technologies. So they may have orchestrated via Liana Technologies to manipulate the queries in Google, not only to win, but to not compete with each other. So imagine the gravity of that. So that's why I believe, tying it back to the real world and to Diosdado Cabello and the Iranians, that's the reason why I intuitively thought there must be a Cuban, because Amazon is really Raul Castro's interest, right? And eBay is the Iranian interest in the shopping, in the internet shopping world. So there must be one individual out there that is Iranian or with Iranian family in Iran that is also a Cuban citizen or that has business or ties with Cuba to serve as a coordination point, or maybe Venezuela, to serve as a juncture point, as Harold is doing with the mega clusters, but with these two internet companies that are orchestrating, obviously, the domination of the shopping world. Now, having said that, obviously, right, the conclusion from this is that Google must be in this. Why? Because Google has its own shopping product that has traditionally failed, right? Inexplicably. And I say inexplicably because how can you explain that you being the company, right, that controls the search market by any metric you decide to measure this, having inside your own company the engineers that work on the algorithm, the search ranking algorithms, still you can't dominate, and having control of the product, that you can argue that anti-competitive rules and Google is playing by the rules and they're going to manipulate. Okay, let's say that for a second, right? But still, how can you explain that these two external companies can dominate the entire spectrum, the entire distribution, head and tail, in a way that it's basically a split in between the two companies perfectly with little overlap, if any? And you don't get any participation in that market, having your own shopping product. It's unbelievable, right? Now, interestingly, the director of the shopping team back from the days when Liana Technology was formed and when they installed the ranking code for NAFBoost, all this is documented in the website. That director is an Indian guy, okay? And then he left the shopping team and came to local to manage local. So he became the manager of Michael Schubert. And this will be our next session, right? More the deep dive into the dynamics of the Google NavBoost team. I'm not going to talk about the technologies because I'm not going to give away Google's technologies in these sessions because I respect intellectual property. But I'm going to talk about the individuals that were involved in this, right? According to what I believe and what the pipeline is telling. So that Indian director that ran the shopping team that allowed to Google's shopping product to fail miserably and allowed eBay's products or pages and Amazon pages to basically colonize all the shopping queries space. That guy then became Michael's manager, right? And he was reporting to Elizabeth Ray, who was also flagged. So you can see how it works, right? So they position this guy. Unfortunately, I have an entity that represents him in the system, but I don't have his name. I can't recall his name. He was but like in 2016, he was the one that replaced Jeremy Hilton as director of local search in New York. And he was an Indian gentleman, maybe 5'10", 5'9", maybe. He wasn't very tall. I would put him close to 200 pounds, maybe a little bit more. He wore reading glasses, black hair. And I think he joined around the time Mayur left for Goldman Sachs. So that's the guy. So what I think is that he was responsible of making sure that Google Shopping failed, because that was the only way that these two companies could overtake the entire shopping queries distribution, right? In the way that they split them between the two. Now, you would say, but then it means that Amazon is getting the better deal because they have the most expensive queries. Not necessarily, because remember, those are the more frequent queries and the more expensive queries, but also there are a small number of queries compared to the tail. Like the tail of the distribution is very long. What matters really is the area under the curve, right? And imagine that tail on this left side is infinitely long, right? That area could end up being huge. And I don't know, it could be a 50-50 split in terms of money. I don't know. I will have to do analysis, right, to be able to give a number of what I think is the monetary split. But it doesn't mean that eBay is getting the worst deal here. It could be the opposite, right? Because we're talking about billions of queries, right? Billions. And it's not only the queries, right? It's also, how do I say this? Imagine that you want to insert a bug in somebody's house, okay? And you want to do it using, let's pick a real example, right? They love doing this, the plastic plants, those ornamental plastic plants that they sell in Amazon and other places. Actually, that's not a good example because it doesn't have a specific number, so the query wouldn't be very long. Yeah, we can use it as an example, right? So imagine plastic plants, okay? So if you want to insert a bug into somebody's house in one of these plastic ornamental plants that they sell on Amazon and eBay too, right? If you do it through Amazon, you would have to be able to bump all the types of plants, because Amazon is getting the head queries mostly, right? So if somebody types in plastic plant, just plastic plant, they would likely get Amazon on top, okay? But then that would take them to a search results page in Amazon full of plastic plants, and there could be 200 products in there. So if the objective is to insert a bug using plastic plants, with this query, Amazon will have to block all the plastic plants that are carried, right? Unless they do it on the distribution chain. It could also be, right? But if you are on eBay, it's more effective because people are looking for longer queries, which means the product search is more specific and the link will land in the actual product page. So what that means is that if they know that you like a specific type of plant or of a specific color, then eBay is a better channel to insert the bug in this way, because you're more likely to land in a very specific product page. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if the objective is economic gain, maybe the split could be 50-50. I don't know. I will have to do the math. But I'm guessing the Iranians are probably getting the better deal, both because the level of hierarchy in the organization that I can see in the data, and also because of orchestration that I can see from observation. That they're probably orchestrating all these at the top of the top. And also because of the fact that I know that the tail is infinitely long, like not really infinite. Everything has a limit, but it's a super long tail. And in that long tail, the area under the curve might end up being bigger than in the head of the distribution. Also because I think it gives them an advantage to insert bugs because of the specificity of the query. So I think from an intelligence point of view of planting bugs in somebody's house or life, eBay is more effective than Amazon. For that reason, it's just a hypothesis. Of course, I will have to test this, but it's just something to think about. But I think the bigger question is, and this is something that I think authorities should investigate, if there was orchestration to split the queries in this way, because if there was, it shows that these people are really a coalition of countries, right? It's not just an isolated actor acting criminally. It's a coalition of countries basically dividing the internet for financial gain and for getting themselves the opportunity to implant bugs on people's houses. So it's really mind-boggling. So I'll cut this one here, and then on the next episode we're going to talk about NavBoost, and not NavBoost itself, not the technology, but how it was stolen by this criminal network to control the internet. Okay, thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.